everybody, welcome. This is Cooks Who Care, and we are targeting a specific topic that can help operators kind of learn how to take a little more action when it comes to issues of fair wage and immigration.
If this is in fact what happens in the new administration, massive immigration enforcement, like we're gonna have major labor shortages in our industry. It's never worked in history to isolate ourselves.
Never.
You know,
Yeah.
we're only stronger together.
Yeah.
And that has been proven time and time again.
Exactly.
And so ROC is an organization that does kind of a hybrid of like legal and organizing work, and it focuses on the intersection of labor and immigration.
We are here with the Restaurant Opportunity Center representative, Miss Sheila, and I'll have her introduce herself to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheila Maddali. I'm the co-director of ROC United's Law and Organizing Department, based in Philadelphia.
Fair wage. Can you frame for us your mission to provide fair wage?
Sure. So the One Fair Wage campaign is about increasing the overall minimum wage, but making sure tipped workers are included. And so we're working on that campaign in many states throughout the country and cities, as well as a federal level. And so the reason, I think part of the reason why there is a sub-minimum wage, in addition to the history and in addition to the force of the Restaurant Association, is that the Restaurant Association, in addition to the money they spend lobbying, they've been very successful at painting this picture of a tipped worker as like a white man who works in fine dining and makes six figures in tips, or like a teenager working over the summer for a little extra cash. Whereas the reality is over 70% of tipped workers are women, and the median wage of a tipped worker in the United States is $8.90, including tips.
Wow.
And so the median age is 31, and 31% of whom are parents, right? So, and they're working in restaurants, not fine dining restaurants, right? The majority of tipped workers in the United States are working in Olive Gardens and IHOPs. And I think sometimes it's a little bit easier to forget that in cities, or if you're in a restaurant that's kind of, doing really well in a city. But I think the reality is the minimum wage increase rate affects everyone, and it's across the board.
Yeah.
And so a lot of
I think it's important to paint the picture of the assumption. Like, what is it that the person is visualizing in their mind? Because if I can't imagine it any different, I'm not going to change the way that it would be.
Right. And it's kind of like, well, why is it so important? If this person's making six-figure in tips, maybe it's not fair, but they're doing really well. But the reality is, right, that the average to the median wage is $8.90. 31% are parents, over 70% are women, right? And so, and it's an industry where tipped workers as a workforce have 3 times the poverty rate of the general workforce and rely on food stamps at double the rate, which means the people who are putting food on our tables can't afford to put food on their own, which is like a terrible irony. And sometimes people will say, well, look, people just want to like scam the system and get on food stamps. But I think anybody who has ever been on food stamps or talked to anyone who's been on food stamps knows it's not an easy process. It's not glamorous. It's not fun. People are not getting on food stamps because it's, the easy way out. People are getting on food stamps because they need to. And the fact that tipped workers are relying on it at double the rate is a pretty horrifying trend, So our main campaign, our policy initiative right now is raising the minimum wage, but specifically making sure that tipped workers are included. Since the history of the minimum wage, there's been a sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. So in the last 80 years, the tip wage has gone from $0 to $2.13 an hour.
Yeah. Look at that frame of time. Yeah.
So, and right now we're in a moment where for the first time in a century, there's a huge segment of the population that's saying this industry should pay its workers a base wage, and then tips can be on top of that. And so that's our main priority, is making sure that the next time the minimum wage increases, the tipped workers are included. There's actually 8 states in the United States that have no sub-minimum wage. So I think as a country, we're not, I think we're not all on the same page around the minimum wage. So like California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Nevada, Montana, Minnesota, and actually recently Maine, all have no sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. And we've done a lot of research on this, and we've actually found that those states have higher restaurant sales per capita and higher rates of industry growth. And some even have higher rates of tipping. Like actually Alaska has the highest rate of tipping in the United States, which is interesting, So based on that rate, we see that it is possible, and that it's not like you go to California and you don't tip.
Right.
In fact, people tip more. And so, I think that there is a culture change happening, but also on the local level, even places where we have a sub-minimum wage, we've seen employers like Gerard, going to a one fair wage, or some even going to a tipless model, but a lot of employers going to a one fair wage model. And that momentum we've seen throughout the country, even high profile restaurateurs like Danny Myers. And we're seeing that, you know, all over the place, small towns, big cities.
How is that working somewhere else? Because for me as an operator, I want to see who else is doing it. I need a model. I need to mimic something. I need something to set up as a system that I can build my own system off of. Like you said, it's very independent to, like, not every state is at the same place. What are some things that you could possibly recommend to people if there's a platform that people can see, like, here's kind of where, I don't know, I don't want to say like a standard level, but is there something that people can go to kind of see, like, how can I do this for myself?
Absolutely. So at R.O.C, a lot of our work has been engaging high road employers, which are employers that are responsible employers who are looking to implement pro-worker policies and kind of have a peer network to kind of share and work through that. And so it's called RAISE, which stands for Restaurants Advancing Industry Standards and Equality. And through RAISE, we work with employers to kind of figure out how they can implement that. So we have a consulting firm within RAISE that helps employers look at how they can move to that model, but also connect with other employers throughout the country, where we have hundreds of employers throughout the country that are implementing these policies, and we'll work with them to kind of figure out how they can do it. And, you know, what we always say is that the high road is a path, not a destination. So employers are all along that path, right? Some don't have one fair wage, but are just interested in learning and being part of the conversation. And I think that's great, right? For our legislators to hear from employers that are just thinking about going down this way is extremely important. And for workers to know, I think that there is a base of employers that care about how they're treated, and that there's an alternative to the National Restaurant Association that is inclusive and that really is looking about sustainability in the food system in a way that includes the workers. I think we are in a time where there is no absolute sanctuary for immigrants or people of color, and I think that is the reality. But how I see sanctuary cities and the sanctuary restaurant movement, it's about creating safer spaces, right, where people feel included and where there is some level of protection. And so within the Sanctuary Restaurant Project, the idea is we want to create safer spaces for people when they go to work, that they know, that they can feel that the oppression that is seemingly filling our lives will not happen here, and that people in that restaurant know and care about the workers and their rights. And so while there is, and we can never say to people that there is any real safe place, even if there is not collaboration between the police and immigration, as there is in a sanctuary city, that doesn't mean that individual police officers might not report to ICE, or that ICE will necessarily follow the policies that are recommended. And so what we're trying to do is create a major culture shift. And I think it's really important that the restaurant industry steps up as one of the largest employers of immigrants. I think the second largest employer of undocumented immigrants.
Right.
But also, within the Sanctuary Restaurant Project, we use an expanded definition of sanctuary, meaning that we're trying to create safer spaces for all communities under attack by the current administration. So immigrants, Muslim workers, LGBTQ workers, women, working class and poor people who rely on public assistance, which is extremely high in our industry. I think our industry relies on food stamps at double the rate of the general workforce. And so there's many ways people in the restaurant industry are affected. And so we are doing trainings for employers about what their rights and obligations are when dealing with immigration, but also policies, their obligations, and how they can be good employers in terms of implementing anti-discrimination policies in the hiring process, in the workplace process, and really kind of step up in this moment. And then we're also doing similar trainings for workers, so people know their rights, because I think that's really what makes people safer, is knowing their rights and knowing that they're part of a community that can feel empowered, and that there are resources and people who are there. I think in some ways, I think there's definitely a lot more fear right now. I mean, I think we haven't really seen that spike in enforcement yet, but I think there's definitely more fear, and part of what raids are about is creating fear and chaos, right? And so have we actually seen an increase in immigration raids or enforcement? Not really. This has been happening all along, but I think what is very, very real is the fear that people are bringing to work with them.
What inspired you to join the efforts of R.O.C?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I worked in like restaurants and retail, and would spend my free time like organizing, go to protests, and then go straight from work to a protest or something, but being like completely oblivious to the organizing capacity within the industry I was working. And so I continued organizing like all of my teenage years during college. Eventually went to law school, and after law school, I was doing immigration law. Okay. And it was just doing immigration law and having to tell people that there was just such like little avenues available to them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as an organizer and as a daughter of immigrants, it was just something that I didn't believe, right? I was like, maybe through the legal system there are very little avenues, but I think that as a community we can do better.
So what can I do as a business owner or staff member to be more proactive in my action, to be more fair in this industry?
I think business owners should definitely get in touch and join RAISE, which is our employer association, where we can discuss and work on implementing policies in the workplace. And restaurant workers should definitely get involved as R.O.C members to kind of help shape the policies, strategies, and events we do, which is industry parties. And I think one way people can do that like immediately is to join the Sanctuary Restaurant Project, and you can do that by text, which is really easy, and then we'll follow up based on if you're a worker or an employer. But people just text the word TABLE, TABLE, to 225568, and then we'll invite folks to webinars or to meetings. But also in Philadelphia, anyone based in Philadelphia can get in touch with our local staff.
Nice.
We have to have that, and we do have that, right? We have stories. We have like incredible people who have been able to like make things work in this industry. The potential for the restaurant industry is amazing. Yeah. Right? And it's like it needs to be an industry that continues to survive and thrive. But if it's based on not paying people a wage or like living in fear of deportation, then it's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
today. I am like so honored to have you here.
No, it was great talking to you.
And we want